That morning, my daughter-in-law sent me just one text. "You're not coming on the cruise with us. They figured I'd stay quiet." Like I always did. By lunchtime, I had canceled the whole trip, stopped every payment, sold the house, and vanished before they got back. My coffee was still steaming in the mug when my phone buzzed on the granite counter. That sharp little vibration cut right through the quiet of my kitchen in a leafy Seattle neighborhood. I thought it was probably my son Ryan texting about luggage tags for our big family cruise. Instead, I read the message from my daughter-in-law, Lauren. Plans changed. "You're not coming on the cruise. We decided the kids need the cabin space, and we want to keep it just our little core family. We'll talk later." I stared at the screen while my brain tried to process it like it was in a foreign language. We'd been planning this trip for over a year, down to every last detail. I was the one who'd put down the deposit from my savings. I'd picked the route through the Alaskan fjords and booked all the shore excursions so the grandkids could actually learn something. Outside, the garbage truck rumbled down our quiet, tree-lined street. Everything looked so eerily normal, while something inside my chest just cracked wide open. Lauren had always been cool and calculating, but this felt like a deliberate slap in the face. To her, I was the free babysitter, the cook, and the one quietly paying the property taxes on that big house. Now that the luxury vacation was right around the corner, I was being tossed aside like an old coat. I looked around my living room. Everywhere were the signs of their slow takeover. Those trendy, soulless vases on my heirloom furniture, and plastic toys scattered across the expensive hardwood floors. I didn't wait for an apology from Ryan. I knew he was sitting right next to her in the car, staring at the road in silence, going along with it just to avoid another fight. He was my only son, but he'd forgotten who made this easy life possible for him. I set the phone down with this strange, eerie calm. My hand wasn't even shaking. A cold kind of peace washed over me. If they could cut me out of their vacation with a single text, then I could cut them out of my house with my actions. It was time to flip the script. I wasn't the maid. I was the owner. Once the initial shock wore off, I got precise. I went straight to the big oak desk in the study where I kept the gray folder with all the travel paperwork. Lauren probably thought she was in control because the confirmation emails went to her laptop. What her arrogance made her forget, I was the one who booked everything. I'd used my premium credit card and held full power of attorney for any changes. With steady fingers, I dialed the cruise line. My heart beat slow and even. "Good afternoon. This is Martha Caldwell, booking number 772 Alpha. I'd like to cancel the entire reservation for cabin 702 and the adjoining suite effective immediately." The woman on the phone sounded concerned. "Mrs. Caldwell, this is extremely last minute. The cancellation fees are about 80% of the total cost, around $12,000 for the package." I glanced out the window at the manicured garden I'd been funding alone for years. "That's fine with me," I said firmly. "Process the cancellation right away and send the confirmation only to my personal email. Refund the balance to my account." Next, I opened my online banking. It felt like taking inventory of all the ways I'd been betraying myself. I saw the monthly automatic transfers I'd been sending to Ryan's account money that should have been building my retirement, but instead floated into their upscale lifestyle. Living expense supplement, grandkids bonus, gardener allowance. With 3 clicks, I deleted them all. It felt like cutting off an oxygen line they'd been breathing through for years. Then I called my old friend Linda, who runs a real estate office. Linda, that investor who inquired about a property in this prime location 6 months ago, is his offer still good? Yes, perfect. I'm selling. Today. He can have it as an investment property, but on one condition: immediate closing, no showings. Linda hesitated, but I was already planning the next step. The house I'd lived in for over 30 years suddenly felt like a rented stage set. I moved through the rooms, methodically taking only what had soul: my jewelry, the heavy old photo albums from when my late husband was still here, and my clothes. I didn't need suitcases full of memories from people who treated me like an inconvenient line item in their budget. Lauren, Ryan, and the kids had gone to her parents' place for the weekend to celebrate the big departure. They figured I'd be here obediently watering the flowers. They had no idea I was already loading 2 moving boxes into my little VW. In the kitchen, a note still hung on the fridge in Lauren's bossy handwriting: "Martha, please, accept any packages for me. And don't forget to water the lawn, it's supposed to be hot." I pulled the note down, looked at it for a second, then let it drift slowly into the trash. There'd be no water for that lawn, at least, not from me. My eyes landed on the spare set of house keys hanging by the door. I slipped them into my purse. The control over this property was literally in my hand now. I felt no sadness, only this huge wave of relief. For years, I'd played the patient grandma, smiling through the insults to keep the family peace. But peace bought with self-erasure is just quiet slavery. At 11, Linda's email came. The investor had agreed. A notary appointment for the power of attorney was set for that afternoon. The house was mine alone, inherited from my aunt, and paid off with my own hard work. Ryan had only lived there because I'd allowed it. I locked the front door, got in the car, and drove toward the highway without once looking in the rearview mirror. I arrived at a small, discreet hotel on the Oregon coast and did something I hadn't dared in years. I turned my phone completely off. I wanted to hear the rhythmic crash of the waves and smell the salt air, not the shrill ping of Lauren's demands. I spent the afternoon walking the nearly empty beach. The raw wind blew years of cobwebs out of my mind. I thought about Ryan. I still loved him. But I had to admit I'd raised him into a weak man by clearing every obstacle from his path. Lauren had smelled that weakness and pulled his strings like a puppet. They'd both forgotten the golden rule: never bite the hand that feeds you. The next morning at breakfast, when I finally turned my phone back on, it exploded with notifications. 42 missed calls, a barrage of texts. The first from Lauren, sent the morning of the planned departure: "Martha, what's going on with the credit card?" The cruise line says the booking was canceled. "We're standing here at check-in. Call back now." I could picture her red face, humiliated in front of the other passengers. Then came Ryan's messages, shifting from confusion to raw panic. "Mom, where are you?" "We drove back to the house because we couldn't get on the ship." "Why don't our keys work anymore?" "The locksmith says he can't let us in without your permission." What is happening? The most telling one came from Lauren 2 hours earlier. "This is illegal. We're calling the police. You can't just lock us out. We have kids." I sat calmly on the edge of the bed, took a sip of water, and typed my only reply: "I'm away. The house is sold. The new owner takes over soon. Your personal things are packed in the garage. I changed the garage code. You'll get it only after you sign the release form with the neighbor." It took less than 5 minutes for Ryan to call. His voice sounded cracked, nothing like the arrogant tone of the past few weeks. "Mom, please tell me this is a bad joke." "Sold? How could you sell our home?" I stayed completely matter-of-fact, my voice as calm as the sea outside my window. "Ryan, it was never legally your home. It was mine. You lived there like guests who forgot the stay was temporary. You informed me by text that I was just dead weight for your core family. I respected that decision and removed myself from your life along with my property. But the kids," he stammered. I cut him off gently. The kids have parents, Ryan. It's your job to put a roof over their heads, not mine. I subsidized you for years so you could afford luxuries while I stayed in the guest room. That ends now. In the background, I heard Lauren screaming, demanding the phone. When she finally took over, her voice was pure screech. You're going to regret this. We have tenants' rights. We'll take you to court. I let her finish, then answered softly, Lauren, we never had a lease. You never paid a single dollar in rent or utilities. Legally, it was a loan of the property that I could revoke any time. I did. The new owner is a real estate holding company. If you want to fight their lawyers. But I warn you, they're not as patient as I was. Your whole budget for the next few years will go to legal fees if you don't get reasonable now. There was a long silence. I could almost feel the floor dropping out from under them. We don't have money for a new place, she whispered finally. Then maybe it's time you started saving, I said, and hung up. The next day, Ryan and Lauren had to finish the humiliation. They returned to the house to collect their belongings from the garage. Our neighbor, Mr. Harlan, a retired teacher with a sharp sense of justice, oversaw it at my request. He told me every detail later on the phone. He only opened the garage after Ryan signed a document confirming all claims against me were settled. Lauren apparently threw a fit, but Mr. Harlan stayed unmoved. It was a pitiful scene. Everything they'd staged as their grand lifestyle in my house fit into one rented moving van. Since most of the nice furniture belonged to me and was included in the investor's purchase, they were left with their clothes, the kids' toys, and a few small appliances. Ryan looked like a broken man, according to Mr. Harlan. He carried box after box in silence, while Lauren tried to buttonhole passing neighbors, painting me as the crazy old lady. But the neighbors knew the truth. They'd watched for years as I tended the garden, while Lauren sipped cocktails on the patio and Ryan barked orders. No one offered to help or gave them a guest room. Meanwhile, I sat in a little cafe near the coast, enjoying a slice of apple pie. For the first time since my husband died, I didn't feel responsible for the happiness of a son who couldn't even follow the simplest rules of respect. The financial security from the sale, well over $1 million, was enormous. I was now a well-off woman who no longer had to worry about an ungrateful daughter-in-law's inheritance fantasies. 4 weeks later, I'd settled into a lovely 2-bedroom apartment in a charming college town in Oregon, full of bikes culture and history, far from the shadows of my old life. One afternoon, a handwritten letter arrived in the mailbox. Real ink on paper, not frantic typing on a screen. It was from Ryan. He wrote from a modest 3-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Seattle in a neighborhood Lauren used to call beneath us. The letter was heavy with exhaustion. He described how Lauren now worked full-time at a call center while he picked up the kids from daycare after his office shifts and handled the housework. They couldn't afford any help anymore. Mom, he wrote, I'm only now starting to realize that the warm house, the meals on the table, and the peace we had weren't just automatic. They were because of you. I let Lauren treat you like staff because it was the path of least resistance for me. I'm ashamed. I read the letter twice, very slowly. It was the first time in his adult life that Ryan showed real remorse without it being tied to an immediate ask for money. Still, I stayed cautious. I replied factually, but kindly. I told him about my new freedom, the concerts I was attending, and the quiet in my new town. I offered no financial help. I wanted him to feel this hardness, because only rubbing up against reality would turn him into a man who could stand up for his family instead of hiding behind his wife. I closed with respect is the real currency in a family. When the account runs dry, the whole house collapses. 2 months later, I agreed to a meeting. Ryan took the train up. When he stepped off at the station, I almost didn't recognize him at first. He'd gotten leaner, his face more defined but etched with sleepless nights and hard work. We sat in a traditional cafe right across from the old church spires. The atmosphere felt formal, almost like a business meeting. He started talking right away. He and Lauren were on the brink of separating because the constant money stress had shattered their superficial harmony. She blames you for everything, he said, quietly staring into his coffee. But I know now, we did this to ourselves. She wanted the cruise, she didn't want you there. And I was too cowardly to say no. He looked at me, searching for the old Martha who always fixed everything. Did you really sell the house just because of that text? I shook my head slowly. No, Ryan. The text was just the moment I woke up. I sold the house because I realized I no longer had a place in your life as a person. I was just an ATM and a cleaning lady. He swallowed hard. Lauren wanted me to ask if you'd front us the deposit for a bigger place. She says it's owed to us since it was going to be the inheritance someday. I placed my hand briefly over his, but my gaze stayed firm. Tell Lauren this for me. Inheritance is something you receive when someone who loved you is gone. I'm still here, and my money is mine. I won't pour a single cent into a bottomless pit. If you want a bigger place, you'll have to earn it. That's the only lesson that can still save you now. He nodded slowly. It wasn't an angry nod, it was one of understanding. Time passed, and Ryan's visits became less frequent, but much higher in quality. He no longer called when a bill was due, but when he needed advice on building a budget or talking to the kids about going without. I watched him change. He started taking real pride in small wins like finding a cheaper insurance policy or earning a raise through hard work. Lauren stayed a distant, bitter figure on the edge. She seemed to have finally realized her manipulative tricks no longer worked on me. I'd made my new apartment in Oregon feel perfectly mine. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall, I'd chosen them myself. No more compromises. I'd found a small hiking group and we explored the area on weekends. It was a life without drama, without the constant fear of offending someone who never really appreciated me anyway. My financial independence was my shield. I'd learned that generosity without boundaries isn't a virtue, it's an open invitation to be taken advantage of. One evening, Ryan sent me a photo of their little apartment. He'd set the table with simple pasta, but the kids were laughing in the picture. He wrote, "It's not the big house in Seattle, but for the first time, it actually feels like a real home. Thank you, Mom, for the tough lesson." I felt a tear of relief in my eye. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I hadn't lost my son, I'd finally found him by making him stand on his own 2 feet. I replied, "I'm proud of you, Ryan. See you soon." Today, I'm sitting on my balcony, looking out over the peaceful rooftops of my new town. In my hand is an invitation to a summer gathering at Ryan's modest apartment. It's not some fancy catered event like Lauren used to love, just a simple backyard barbecue. I've decided to go, but I'll come as a guest, not a rescuer. I'll bring a gift for the kids, but no envelopes of cash. Those days of endless self-sacrifice are finally over. In the last few months, I've learned one thing: revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be destructive. The best revenge is a life well lived and the setting of unbreakable boundaries. By refusing to roll over, I taught Ryan what it means to take responsibility. And I showed Lauren that power in the household means nothing if you don't honor the foundation of respect and ownership. My life now is a calm river, no longer a stormy sea. If you're reading this and you're in a similar spot, if you feel yourself being pushed to the sidelines in your own family, remember my story. Love doesn't mean letting yourself be erased. Love requires equality. Protect your heart, but above all, protect your resources. Know your worth and know exactly whose name is on the deed. Be ready to turn the key when the door only opens one way. I'm Martha. I'm almost 70, and I've just learned what it really means to be free. The cruise ship sailed without me, but I'm standing on my own shore, and I've never been happier. Sometimes you don't have to say a word. You just stop, and the rest speaks for itself.